Hello, I'm Devdeep Ahuja and I am the Clinical Director of RTW Plus. Today I thought I'll just do a quick video on choosing a research topic. Now, this video is targeted mainly for students, bachelor students or master students who are going to be doing their dissertations, who want to be doing their research projects as a part of their degree. Usually the choice of sort of research area forms the basis of future career in research. So if you want to do even work as a postdoc fellow, doing your academic professorships, training, teaching, in fact your appointment in any academic position may depend on your research interests itself. So this is vitally important that the choice of research area and the topic is done wisely and with considerable thought. Um, Now, it can be quite daunting and it can be quite challenging, and that's one of the reasons I suppose I get a lot of messages on Facebook or even on WhatsApp asking me, can you just suggest a research topic for my research project? No one can just give you a topic. It just doesn't work that way. It's not that straightforward. I can't just say just do your research on this topic without understanding what your research interests are, what you really want to do, what the goal of your project is. So I just can't give you a topic that, yeah, go ahead and do research on myofascial release, for example. Someone suggested a topic. Anyway, so as you would be spending a lot of time on the selected topic, whether you are reading it, whether you're writing it, whether you're going to be subsequently publishing papers on it, it is imperative that you choose an area should be of interest to you. So let's just go ahead and think about how you can choose a topic. So before we do that, I think what we should do is just define research. So what exactly is research? What do we mean by research project? What we're trying to do? So I won't go into the details of this definition, but it's essentially a systematic inquiry. That's the key thing. Really, is that you are looking at any topic, any aspect of, whether it is physiotherapy, whether it is any other subject. You're looking at the specific topic in a very scientific, structured manner. One of the key things around research is that it should be repeatable. So if I do a research project and if someone else wants to just pick up the topic that I have done and they choose the same methodology, they choose the same methods, they choose the same way that I've done it, then the results should be repeatable. So you should essentially get similar kind of results. You might not get exactly the same because there's lots of different variables, but it should be repeatable, and therefore it should also be generalizable, so it should be extendable to other situations. So the next part that we're going to talk about is the research process. So I'll just quickly go through the process with you. I'm not going to go into the detail of the research process with you here, but it is essentially just to highlight that it is a systematic process. It's a structured process. So you got to define what the problem that you're going to look at, review the literature around that problem, see what's already been researched, what is already available, what do we already know about that topic, where the gaps in literature are, and that those gaps essentially help you to formulate the research question. Based on the research question, then you decide on how are you going to structure your study, what designs you're going to use, whether you're going to do a qualitative study, a quantitative study, what you're going to do essentially. Once you've done your research design, you do a research proposal. So we need to create a detailed research proposal, which is essentially saying, this is why I'm doing this study, this is how I'm going to do this study, this is how I'm going to collect the data, this is how I'm going to analyze the data, and what is the result, what is the outcome that I'm expecting. So you collect the data, then you analyze the data, then you interpret, and then you report on that. So dissemination is a key part of the research process as well. So that's essentially the process in a nutshell. Okay, so the next step that we're going to do, the first step of research process is defining the research problem. So in order to develop your research topic, in order to choose your research topic, in order to develop your research question, what are you going to be looking at? The first part is, what is the area that you're going to be looking at? So start with a wide slate. Okay, think about it in the sense that if you are a musculoskeletal physiotherapist, you're going to be looking at musculoskeletal physiotherapy. If you're going to be looking at, if you're a neurological physiotherapist, then you're going to start to look at neuro topics, yeah, stroke and brain injury and those kind of things. Okay, so that's your first starting point. So if, say, I'm a musculoskeletal physiotherapist and my interest is in shoulder, and therefore I'm going to say, okay, my area of interest is shoulder, I want to be doing some research on shoulder. Yeah, but when you're going to be looking at these topics, I think it's really important to look at what you're really interested in. So knee, or say for example ankle, is not necessarily a topic that I'm really interested in. So if I choose a research topic on that, on ankle for example, and that's not something that's going to help me sustain my interest in that topic over the sustained long period of time that I've got to do, and the amount of time that I have to spend doing the research project. So consider your interest first. I think that's really, really important. But also when you're doing it at an undergraduate level, or even at MSc level, I suppose, consider the area and expertise of your supervisors, of the advisor that you've been allocated. Consider what their interests are. That's quite important as well, because an advisor and a supervisor are really key element to the success of your research project. So if your topic doesn't interest them, if they don't really know a lot about your topic, then they're not going to be very keen to support you. They won't really have the expertise to support you. So if your supervisor is a neurological physiotherapist, you don't want to be choosing a musculoskeletal topic, but also look at more of the expertise of shoulder, mulligans, go into the detail of where their interest might lie. And I mean, when you're doing your PhD, you want to probably choose a supervisor whose interests match yours. But at undergraduate and maybe MSc levels, you probably can't choose your own supervisors. You just go with what's been allocated to you. So it's important to try and understand where their interests lie. But also another element is consider the time frame that's available. So it's not just about data collection. It's not that you got to interview 50 people or interview 20 people, or whether you're going to do a survey with 100 people or 200 people or whatever. It's not just about data collection. It's then about the analysis. You're going to spend time doing the analysis, interpretation of it, writing up your thesis, whether you're going to be writing it just a dissertation or whether you got to publish papers. You got to consider the time frame for all of that. So you might need to write the first draft, submit it to your supervisor. He might make some suggestions, amendments, whatever. And so you got to consider all of that time frame into the structure and design of your research project. So it's important that you take those into consideration. Okay, so once you've decided that you want to do your research in shoulder or in stroke or whatever, some people suggest that it's best first of all to choose a research design. So whether you want to do a subjective qualitative interview type of study, or whether you want to do more of a quantitative randomized controlled trial, or a survey, or a prospective cohort type of study. So it just, some of the researchers suggest that it is best to choose the research design first and then try and finalize the research question. But I think from my experience, what I've found is that it's best to go with the flow. So first of all, you choose the topic. So you say, let's just take an example that I want to do some research in shoulder, for example. Yeah, my interest lies in shoulder, so I'll just talk about shoulder. So identifying gaps in literature is the best means of developing a research question. So once I decide that I want to do a research topic based on shoulder, something around shoulder pain, for example, that's what I want to research on. The next logical step is to undertake a literature review. So just read some of the recent papers published in your area. So if I'm talking about shoulder pain, look at some of the recent papers that have been published on shoulder pain. um, so that's pretty easy. Just go on to scholar.google.co.uk or whatever, scholar.google.com, for example. Just go on to that and put in shoulder pain and physiotherapy, for example, and it'll come up with lots of different research papers. You don't need electronic databases for your initial quick search. You don't need the detailed electronic databases and such. It's good if you got access to those, then that's great. If you can access through subscriptions or through your library or your college or your university, if you can access those databases, that's great. But if you can't, then straightforward, just go to scholar.google.com and put in the topic, and it'll give you lots and lots and lots of research papers. Some of those are freely available as well, so the PDFs of those papers or HTML versions, those are available online free of cost as well. So that's always a good start. So read some research papers on your topic, whatever topic you like. Just read some research papers on that. And when you are reading any study, it's imperative that you focus on what that study is doing, what the research questions of that study were, uh, what the clinical implications of that study are, what the research implications of that study are. When they talk about research implications, they will talk about the gaps. They will highlight these are the things that need to be studied further, and that's the best place to identify further research questions in that area. Each study usually would present some recommendations for future research, so just take those as a starting point. So you can identify, so for example, when we're talking about shoulder pains, you can identify the pathologies, you can identify their management strategies, prevalent rates, and other features that have been studied by the researchers. So if we are talking about shoulder pain, what are other people studying? What are the kind of things that they're looking at? So that's about the literature review. So let's say I started with shoulder pain, then I decide, okay, what I want to do is look at the management of shoulder pain. So what I will do is then the next step is try and narrow down the question, try and narrow down that. Through the literature review, you will see, okay, I want to talk about shoulder, I want to talk about pain, I want to talk about the management strategies. So where are we going with that? Okay, so management of shoulder, that could be ultrasound, there could be mobilization, there's exercise, there's taping, there's acupuncture. Lots and lots of different management options are being used by physios to alleviate pain, to improve function. So what are the kind of things, or what are the aims of those people providing those interventions as well? So that's another element to look at. So one of the things is, which of these interventions is effective? So that's one question that you could talk about, is ultrasound effective in reducing shoulder pain, or is mobilization with movement effective in reducing shoulder pain? But then you could think slightly tangentially as well, go on an alternate track, and you could think, what makes the physios decide on their management options? So why one physio would choose ultrasound and the other physio would choose acupuncture, or the third physio would choose mobilization with movement? Why are we choosing those different techniques? What is the rationale? Is there clinical reasoning behind it? What is the reasoning that the physios give? So that can be a good question to ask, is what are the perspectives of physios in terms of looking at what works, so why they choose those interventions. There is also a consideration around whether you can compare the effectiveness of two or three or two or more different interventions. So is some physios are giving ultrasound, some physios are giving mobilization, some physios are giving acupuncture. Is acupuncture better than mobilization with movement? What are the results? Which one is better? There's another element of it that you can consider as well, and that is um, what's the patient's perspective of that? Okay, so you can compare the effectiveness of various interventions. You can study the effectiveness of interventions. You can study the decision making of physios, um, and study the patient's perspective as well. So, what do patients feel? Which one? What do they decide? Do they want to take medicines? Do they want to use acupuncture? Uh, why would they prefer acupuncture over, say, ultrasound? I don't know. So those are the kind of questions. That's how you would develop the questions further. So, straight away, once you start to think in this manner, you can straight away see these are the research questions that you can start to look at. How do physiotherapists decide on management strategies for shoulder pain? What makes them choose one modality over another? What factors play a role in the decision making? Is manual therapy better than ultrasound? Is a combination of treatments better than individual techniques? What is the patient perception of physiotherapy management of shoulder pain? So, just talking to you here for about 15 minutes, we have come up with so many different questions. So, it's just about thinking tangentially, thinking in a wider way, rather than just depending on someone else to give you a question. So, we've got a few questions now, but what we can do is we can decide whether we want to do a qualitative research or whether we want to do a quantitative research. So if we talk about qualitative research, that's more about exploration of the feelings and subjective experiences. So some of the questions that we put here is, what is the patient perception of physiotherapy management of shoulder pain? So in qualitative research, you will do data collection through interviews, observations, focus groups. So you could invite 5 physios to sit together and talk about shoulder pain and see what they think about shoulder pain, how they manage shoulder pain, what influences their decision making. Yeah, reporting is quite flexible in qualitative research, and usually it is very small sample sizes. So 5, 10 physios, and the focus is on generating rich data. The focus is not to generate big numbers, it's about rich data. It's about getting into the depth of that subject. So if you're talking to me, if you're doing an interview with me, you'll try to get as much information out of me as possible, and that's the rich data. That's the big positive from the qualitative research. On the other hand, if you do a quantitative research, so you can do you in quantitative research, you'd be testing objective theories by examining the relationships between variables. So is manual therapy better than ultrasound? Is a combination of treatment better than individual techniques? Is any treatment better than no treatment at all? Those are the kind of questions that you would ask in quantitative research. And data collection and analysis is through the use of objective measures and statistical procedures. There's a lot more structured reporting in quantitative research, and usually you'd need a larger sample size to enhance the generalizability of research. There is also a mixed methods research as well, so you could have a combination of both qualitative and quantitative methods, which results in answering questions which are much more complex. So it's not just about what works, it's also about why it works and how it works, and it's also about in what context does it work. So mixed methods is a lot more complex topic, which obviously I can't go into it at this point, but again, happy to discuss that if someone wants to talk about mixed method research as well. So summary, just choose a topic based on your research, consider your supervisor's expertise, consider the time frame, consider the type of research that you want to do, and read a lot about the topic before you finalize your research question. Just don't ask someone, can you give me a research question or a research topic? It doesn't work that way. It will never work for you. If I give you some research topics based on my interests, you will not enjoy research. If you really want to enjoy research, then yes, I think the best thing to do is read a lot about the topic before finalize the research question. Thank you.